Can theaters adapt? In a world where theaters are likely to have to close unless better movies can draw in audiences, we are now watching the close, potentially, of many of those opportunities for folks to gather around as a community and enjoy entertainment together on the big screen, the silver screen. Now it's being translated into the small screen, interactive entertainment, folks wanting to stay home. But can theaters change that? Can they do something? Can the owners themselves, who have done no wrong, find a way all on their own to pull audiences back in, even without the help of Hollywood? Today we're talking about just that, and we're going to tell you whether or not the theaters are going to become the next big industry to go into the history books forevermore. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that's the kind of language you won't hear at Disney World and not in those Disney movies anymore, and it might have something to do with why the box office is suffering so much. In addition to, of course, the fact that, well, folks didn't like the content in 2023, and they're not going to have any content in 2024. 2025, we'll have to wait and see what happens, but theaters are struggling mightily until then. And that's why today we're taking a look at what can they possibly do to live? How can they make it? This is something that we'll be covering, I think, at length this year, because it's the story that the mainstream does not want to cover, but we must. What could possibly be bigger than theaters, which have been the center of entertainment and how it's disseminated? That's where the big events happen. That's where people go to watch the big movie on opening night. What could be bigger than those theaters that we've done that with for more than a century, going the way of the dodo bird? And that's, I don't know, a very good thing. I don't think it is. But we'll be examining it. We'll be following it. There are perhaps bigger stories, but this is a massive marketplace transitional time, potentially. We're rooting for the theaters here on this channel officially, I'll tell you that. We've got a panel. I want to bring them on. I think you're going to love it. Folks, let's get started right now.
One thing I want to say real quick, Pro. One thing I want to say real quick, Pro, is because I obviously I love going to the movies. Actually, I go to the movies quite often here. But one of the things I'm seeing the theaters do over on this side of the pond, so to say, is in those theaters I am seeing a heck of a lot anime movies, anime OVAs that is being translated very quickly over here to fill these theaters. In fact, in local productions, I know you had the Chinese box office on that because it is very significant if you look at China as a percentage of international box office. But one of the big shifts there is that China is looking at its local productions. It's not really caring as much about foreign productions, especially as relations get a little bit chillier but with China in general. So I think a lot of Hollywood's reliance on those commie dollars is going to decrease in the future, and I don't think that looks good.
Well, they gambled big with that, hoping that eventually they would be able to get into that market more significantly, and of course they morally justified it by saying that they would influence China. The opposite happened, of course. But Andrew, when we go with a year where Hollywood missed the box office projections as recently as April, the April projections missed, where they only obtained 63% of what they thought they would get. 63%. More broadly, can you talk about the disparity in our journalism and our news coverage? In this domain is just one of many. But it feels very much to me like we have moved from an era where we at least tried to articulate the truth as best we could to where journalism now is full-on fictional narrative. What do you make of this, where we're talking about Santa Claus is coming to town, and it should be, you know, raising the red alarms everywhere? We could lose the theater industry.
I think there's going to be a lot of questions, particularly for Bob, on disclosures that he may or may not should have made, or maybe statements he hasn't made. Because remember, the shareholder lawsuits are really focused on right now Chapek. They haven't yet fired at Bob Iger directly. I think they're waiting for the Peltz scenario to play out and see where that goes. But there's a lot of statements that were made regarding certain things that were proven to not be true. And what we consistently see, whether it's covering the legal cases, whether it's covering the movies, the media, the parks, what we see in all realms of Disney is absolutely bought and sold for the mainstream media. And every time they take the Disney position, every single time they drop facts about Disney, but they fail to mention the other side. For example, in the lawsuits, the state of Florida, DeSantis, the CFTOD, they'll file a motion. They'll do the huge groundbreaking audit, which has serious criminal repercussions. And they're like, well, well, there was like 2 things that they haven't turned over yet. There's some cell
DeSantis
phones,
is a
some
poo-poo
text
head.
messages. Yeah, he's a poo-poo head, and he's mean, and he's burning books that were about sexualizing children. But let's ignore that. Let's ignore all those facts. And he's a meanie, right? So they've consistently, if you look at all the major platforms, whether it's online, offline, they've constantly taken that side, which is why we collectively, all of our channels here really, have taken to covering this so relentlessly, because you guys are looking for the truth. And really the only place you can get it from is the independent media nowadays. So
have you been
that's
shocked
why I'm
that,
staying on this.
have you been shocked that over the past few months, the mainstream has started to sound a lot more, their messages have begun to align with us, not in terms of, I don't think they want to do that, but in terms of covering the collapse of Disney. They haven't really joined our side on the Reedy Creek yet. It's too complicated for them.
Yes,
but in terms of the box office, they can no longer ignore it. And they've really started to parrot what we were saying 12 months before. Is that surprising to you that they've adjusted?
They're pulling punches, but the thing, my issue with them coming at Disney, and if you read the articles, they're very careful, especially when it comes to what Disney's pointing out. They don't shame the woke content. They just said, well, Disney's not hitting. Well, Disney's missing the mark. They haven't yet fully come around, but it's not surprising to me because these are disclosures they're going to have to make, particularly in the future in earnings calls and SEC filings and risks and liabilities. These are serious things to disclose when they look at next year and you say, hey, why aren't we making any money? Like, why aren't the shareholders getting anything in return for what they invest in this company? And Bob Iger's going to have to answer for that.
And if you're an investor and you're not BlackRock or whoever, you're going to say, how come all these financial people didn't tell me this was happening? Their own credibility is on the line now, and that's why they have to go the other way.
Well,
not because they want to.
The articles will say nobody saw it coming when the theaters closed for good. Yeah. Nobody saw it coming. No one could have predicted this. But Andrew, before you go, I know you have to hop off.
Well, no. I would like to say, it's inaccurate that nobody saw it coming. Over the 1,000 people that watch this, the thousands of people that are going to catch the replay have seen it coming. And we know that everybody who's watching all of our channels definitely sees it coming. And that's why they're subscribed to the channel, as I would recommend they do right now if they're not subscribed already.
Thank you. Well played, Andrew. And it's the same for your channel as well. When we consider the way that the journalists and access media have phrased this over the past year, we have watched as they have declared, well, it's Star Wars fatigue. Well, it's superhero fatigue. Well, it's animated fatigue. They're waiting for streaming. Now we're at the precipice of it's just flat out movie fatigue. And the problem with declaring movie fatigue is that will be the end of movies outside of streaming. And they can't figure out how to make a profit off of streaming. So what do you two think is when do you think they'll finally start ringing the alarm bell across Hollywood and say, whoa, this is really, really bad, and we need to fix this and save this industry now?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I mean, we touched upon this a little bit in our Rebel Moon discussion the other day before the new year, but everything the media does now, like Hollywood is incapable of taking an ounce of humility and saying, we did this wrong, we spent too much money on this, our budgets are too big. Everything has to be like, it has to boost them. It has to make them look like, oh, we're just victim, like, we're bystanders in all this. Oh, people just got tired of superhero movies. People just got tired of movies. And then you see in the Rebel Moon discussion, we specifically talked about how their metrics are ever changing. It used to be, here are the households that watched it, and go check out that video for the whole issue with the Nielsen numbers.
It's a great video. It is a great video, guys.
I was thinking about that. But you used to have viewer, like households, and then televisions, and then they moved it a couple years back to watch time, and now we're just at households viewed, which is like no information. It's I don't honestly know when they're going to sound the alarm, because we've passed like 9 different situations where it should have been sounded, and they continually double down, ignore, and change the what's the term? It's not the landscape, but sort of like they changed the talking points that their mainstream outlets are allowed to use, right? So you're not allowed to talk about our Marvel's dying. It's people are tired of superheroes, even though No Way Home and Guardians of the Galaxy 3 made money. Like it's all lies, but it's all to cover their own butts, to help them keep on keeping on, because they cannot be wrong. They can never be wrong. And what it means for theaters, I don't know, because like I'll be honest here. When I honestly thought COVID would have been the death of theaters. It was going that way for a long time, and then they managed.
Wall Street Bets came in and saved the biggest chain.
It was a lot of Wall Street Bets. It was a lot of that AMC aping and everything. So having survived that, I don't know if this will kill it 100% outright, but I definitely think we'll start. If this is where we're at, where we're just getting sequels after sequels after sequels, and yes, people do know that, oh, I can just wait, for a month to see this on streaming, and there's no real reason to see these movies now, then we're going to see a lot of closures. I think, it's not going to be pretty. At least, at the very least, it's going to be devastating.
Well, so let me ask this then, Michelle, do you think that they will ever change course, or do you think they will fatigue themselves, or as Tommy Table says it, fatigue themselves into non-existence?
You mean the studios or the theaters?
Well, I think the theaters are victims in this.
Yes, the theaters are victims in this. I think Disney seems to be I guess because their own pride seems to be the last one to kind of bite the bullet and realize they've got to change course. I feel like Warner Brothers, they did have some wins this year. I feel like other studios are beginning to try. I do. And then I also think too, because of the strikes, I think we could begin to see, I think actually because of the strikes, we might actually begin to see, and maybe it won't be this year, maybe it'll be next year, but some smaller budgeted, better written movies begin to come in theaters. And there might be an audience for that again, because people are tired of these big blockbusters that are pretty lifeless and just kind of generic and boring to us all.
Lifeless. I like that. That's a good description, Michelle.
they are. And so I think
that's why I'm like, yeah.
I think there's opportunity. I think there's opportunity here. And if you don't mind bringing up the page you had of the big releases coming out this year.
Absolutely. Happy to do so. Because
my mind just works in how do we save the theaters? Okay. So not that this is going to, save them by any means. Okay. But look, we've got Ghostbusters coming out on March 29th. Well, then put out the original Ghostbusters at the beginning of March.
Yes, here.
Yeah.
You've got Bad Boys coming out June 14th. Put out the original Bad Boys
here
at the beginning of June. And you keep going. If you keep
Hollywood, hire Michelle. These are great ideas.
That's brilliant, and I can prove how brilliant it is by what we've experienced in the comments on the Genre Guys.
Well, think about this.
We did movies that everybody should have seen, but so many young people never did. And I'm going, and then they made 2, 3, and 4, and they were pretty good too. And suddenly it opens up a world to bring people up to speed by showing the inspiration for these new ones. Unless, of course, the new ones are so bad by comparison.
Alien movie?
Exactly. But then you keep going. You got Twister, Alien, Beetlejuice, Joker, Gladiator, Karate Kid. All of those are opportunities at least 2 weeks before they come out to put the original that people loved back in theaters. Because if you put at the beginning of November Gladiator, men and women are going to come out and watch that on the big screen for the first time in 24 years.
Yeah.
They just need to do that with all of these sequels, put the original out at least 2 weeks before that comes out. And I think that will help theaters quite a bit, actually.
And
well said. I totally agree.
Theaters might make more on the originals than they do on the sequel if the sequel stinks by comparison and the word gets out.
Well, the studios too.
Yeah.
Because correct me, Pro, if I'm wrong. I think won't this coming year be the 35th anniversary of Save the Little Mermaid? Put that out in theaters, the original.
Absolutely.
Instead,
yes.
We're getting Luca, which is kind of like Pixar's response.
We're not here to tell you that we're always right. Sometimes we're wrong. 93% accuracy on the scoops for 2000.
I'm here to tell you that. I'm always right.
93% accuracy.
What we're not here to tell you is that we like being right when the news is bad. We don't.
Yeah, well, we'd rather be right on
wish
positive.
It wasn't so, but it is, and you got to be ready for it.
And we do have positive news that we'll be bringing out shortly this week, where we start telling you where the consumers are going, because the consumers, though they might have exited the theaters, though they might not be interested in a lot of the streaming, They are to be found, and we know where the consumers have gone. We're going to be talking about that. That said, there's a reason that the media doesn't want to talk about just how bad this year has been. There's a reason that they want to mislead you, I would say, when it comes to all of this, and that is, of course, that they were complicit in it. That's my take on it. That's why they missed it. They missed it badly. 30 billion expected, might not have hit 20 billion, and there you go. And that is the end for today. Roll the credits. Roll the credits. Oh, wait, before we do, click that like button. Share, subscribe. When you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. And folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, keep having fun. And you know, in this year, maybe go see a movie. It's a good thing.